So there's a television series that aired this past year called Clarkson's Farm. It's about Jeremy Clarkson, the host of the popular British TV series Top Gear. It's a racing show. For many years, Clarkson owned farmland in the Cotswolds, and it was cared for by a local villager. But in 2019, the villager retired, and Clarkson, in his 60th year, decided he would try his hand at farming. How hard could it be? Well, in the first episode, he buys a Lamborghini tractor, 3 times the necessary size because he likes the horsepower. In the second episode, he ignores the advice of his farmhand and makes a mess of the tram lines, providing a great deal of entertainment to his neighbors. Later on, Clarkson will bottle water from the spring and sell it to his Instagram followers, failing to test it first for E. coli. And in a particularly delicious episode, Clarkson neglects to get the seed into his fields in time, and when he goes to the barn to retrieve the next bag, it spills open and reveals a layer of healthy green shoots. The moisture from the air has caused the seed to sprout in the bag, and it's too late to put it in the field. Clarkson may have neglected to sow the seed in a timely fashion. He may have failed to get the seed into the ground, but make no mistake, that seed was destined to spring up. Let anyone with ears to hear listen. The celebration of new ministry that we have gathered for this evening, it's held on the commemoration of John Stewart, a date in the calendar of the Anglican Church of Canada. And it's important that we put some context around this day and consider what it means for us here and now. John Stewart is remembered in Canadian and church history books as an 18th century missionary to the Mohawk Indians and father of the Church of England in Upper Canada. He was born in America, and when the revolution against the English began, Stewart remained loyal to the British Empire. He was hired by the Society of the Propagation of the Gospel. He took his wife and 7 children and moved in among the Iroquois people. And when his life would later be put at risk because of his loyalty to England, the history books tell us that it was a Mohawk chief named Joseph Brant who rescued Stewart. Together they had translated the gospel into the Mohawk language. Canadian church history tends to offer us a specific set of lenses when we're reading about our forefathers in the faith. We could read Stewart's life as a noble one. We could say, here's this man who brought Christianity to the earliest inhabitants of Canada, who mentored a young man into becoming a chief, who worked to put the gospel into their language and to offer a life of prosperity and dignity to a disadvantaged people. But we also know from the oral and written history of First Nations people in North America that the description we often read in Canadian church history books isn't always the full picture. For example, in his letters, John Stewart describes the Mohawk people as savage and vicious in their behavior, unfit persons for British society. He is unwavering in his commitment to the advancement of the gospel as the advancement of colonialism. For Stewart and missionaries of his time, Christianity was used as a tool of military and political power. Religion and colonization at this time are inextricably linked. And it's important that next to the noble telling of Stewart's life, that we recognize this political context, the goal of the British Empire and church missionaries, for the Mohawk people to be assimilated, to become respectful and obedient citizens of the Church of England and the nation of Britain. So what do we do with this? What is the role of something like the commemoration of John Stewart for today's church, and indeed for this congregation of St. Oswald's as you celebrate a new ministry? Well, I sometimes think that the efforts of Christian missionaries can be compared to a farmer who couldn't plant his bag of seed fast enough. The farmer is disappointed when he discovers that the seed, quite apart from his help, has sprouted on its own, that there is life, dignity, resilience, and prosperity in the seed already. That regardless of the farmer, the seed is capable in and of itself of, quote, growing up and increasing, end quote, to use Jesus' words from our gospel reading. The Celtic author and speaker, Philip Newell, talks about a Mohawk elder who came up to him after one of his talks. The elder said to Newell, "Can you imagine what the world would look like if missionaries had met the first peoples of this land and recognized that their souls were already sacred?" Reverend Miranda is someone who recognizes that the soul of each person is sacred. She's a priest who sees God in everything. Even when she isn't sure, she remains curious about Christ already at work in the hearts and minds and lives of people everywhere. And her work is to be the farmer who makes sure that the seed, which will sprout regardless, her work is to make sure that that seed has good soil to grow and thrive wherever it is planted. Amen.